previously I mentioned how movies rely on ethics. When you're looking at a movie, you can actually they develop the character of the person, so you can see their virtue. All right, they tell you the knowledge the person had and they how they act on that knowledge. That's the Socratic side, and often you get to see their character independent of other people because you're in the audience. All right, so they make the person kick a dog. They make the person lie to their best friend, and they develop their character. That's going to be Aristotle. And when you see these in action, you begin to formulate a certain judgment added toward the person as an audience member. David Hume, we're going to look at him as a virtue ethicist, and he's going to look at the feeling. In the movies, they're going to share the feelings of the person, so you could know that they act on their feeling, their rage, and their emotion, things like that. And so then you can make a judgment of them. Okay, they was acting out their passion. Got to forgive them. Right? Those three philosophers, Socrates, Aristotle, are virtue ethics. That means something in their inner world is determining how they're acting. Socrates said you should use knowledge. Aristotle, okay, who is considered to be the father, okay, of biology. The science of biology that you study right now was began by the philosopher Aristotle. He actually began the classification system that we still use in science today. Yes, there's been some changes, but the majority of it, I would say at least 85% is still Aristotle. He started this business of classifying animals, documenting, and figure out how a chick grows in an embryo. So he's very, very good at that. But when he looked at humans, he also saw humans as animals. And he wanted to know what makes the human animal different from the regular animals, all right? So when we look at his moral theory, he writes also the first full textbook on ethics, all right? Nicomachean Ethics, right? So I would really, really recommend you look at the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy and read about Aristotle. And in there, you'll see both a nice summary of his life in the first couple of paragraphs, and then you'll see in the table of content where they look at his morality. And usually you have a good summary of the Nicomachean Ethics on the site. But let's look at him. He's very much methodical, all right? And I use Aristotle to model all the other theories I'm going to look at, all right? So what is human nature? What you think humans are? Aristotle is indirectly a student of Socrates. They belong to the same school. It was Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Plato was the teacher of Aristotle, and Plato learned from Socrates. So they had the same view of reality, and Plato doesn't have a unique theory of ethics. He just uses Socrates, so that's why he's not here in this presentation. Aristotle has a unique theory of reality, which means since he's the house of Plato and Socrates, he very much values knowledge, but he looks at something else. He looks at the process of acquiring knowledge, okay? This is reasoning, okay? He thought you can reason. We can reason to get knowledge. We can think logically to get knowledge. This is what he saw. And in that sense, you acquire all the knowledge. Socrates, look at that. What Socrates talks about. But then there's something else that occurs. He saw that humans are like animals. We are habitual creatures. Okay, we are habitual creatures. We do things out of habit. We can be conditioned by the environment, but we also be conditioned by other people. Okay, he recognized that there's a flexibility in the habits we form over time. There's also flexibility in our reasoning capacity. He says we are fundamentally creatures of reasoning, and we are fundamentally creatures of habits. You know, we act in habitual ways. And morality is going to be a type of habit, not just a knowledge acquired through reason, but a type of habit. So his form of ethic is called ethos or character development. All right. Morality is a trait of character, is a certain habit. Okay. He's going to go beyond Socrates and say knowledge is good. It's important. It's very, very valuable. You need knowledge, but you should convert that knowledge to a trait of character. Don't just have knowledge of honesty, but practice to become a trait of character. And that's the ethics. And this word ethos is our root word for ethics, because generally when people say ethics and they're looking at people, they're looking at their character primarily, okay? The habit you have. But Aristotle realized early on, what would motivate people to do the right thing? They're not born like that, he argued. They're basically animals. We'll be born like that. So what would motivate them? And in his research, he discovered that people were pursuing happiness. And he said, well, we should train everyone, should tell everyone to pursue happiness, which he called eudaimonia, which is called flourishing or living well. And this form of happiness for him had three components. You had to have the goal of pursuing life till its complete end. If currently we live to be 87, you should be trying to live to 87. We live to 110, you should be trying to live to 110. That should be the goal of your life. All right. So that means you don't be engaging in activity that's going to shorten your life unnecessarily. You should also develop your virtues, develop your intelligence, that's your rational side, and develop your character as well. He's going to argue that morality is a trait of character. So if you want to be happy in life, you need to be moral. Okay. So ethics is about happiness. All right. And then he also saw us very uniquely as animals, special kind of animals. We are social animals. To live the good life, what does that mean to live the good life? You must be able to avail yourself of some of the good things in life, like cars, motorcycles, cell phones, plasma TVs, video games. If you can't acquire any of these goods, you don't have a happy life. All right. So happiness is not just, oh, I live long, or I have these good qualities, but I'm also basically wealthy or well-to-do. This was his concept. He thought that this was ought to be the goal of life, and he thought it was achievable. He thought it was achievable. So if you make that the goal of life, Aristotle say, let me show you how a morality works. If you try to be happy in this broad kind of way, this is how you get the ethics, okay? You're pursuing happiness, all right? Imagine pursuing eudaimonia, or happiness. Put that in your memory, eudaimonia, okay? Happiness for Aristotle, right? The first thing you need to do is you need to act like a human being. And what does that mean, acting like a human being? Follow your intelligence. You have ability to reason. You're not just an animal just acting all over the place. You have the ability to reason. Use your intelligence. Exercise your reasoning. Get an education. Obey your reasoning. You reason that you should not eat the pizza. They don't eat the pizza. That's what humans do. They don't eat the pizza. They understand logically that they should not eat the pizza. Therefore, they don't eat the pizza. This is going to be controversial for the next philosopher, David Hume. We're going to say, yes, we follow our reasoning, but our feelings are stronger than our intelligence, okay? So, Aristotle, we need more in this theory. David Hume going to come to that, okay? We'll get to Hume, right? In addition to that, if you actually do what Aristotle is saying, he thinks that the character, remember, whatever you do repeatedly, okay? If every time you're in traffic, you blow your horn, soon it's going to become a habit. The minute the traffic stops, boom, 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 it's a habit. We can form habits like that all the time. If you start biting your nail now and you do it every day, do it for a week, soon you're going to start seeing you start doing it automatically because the character trait will follow easily. All right. So he's saying if you use your intelligence to guide your behavior, the character trait that follows you naturally is going to be better for you because your intelligence will gradually take you in behaviors that are good for you in the long run. Okay, so that makes you a virtuous human being, a better human being than one who does not follow their intelligence. Okay, being better here is about following your intelligence and developing certain traits from doing that, right? In addition, when you look at these traits of virtue that we want to collect, all right, these things that we want, you have to have the right knowledge. Like Socrates said, you have to have the right knowledge. Then you have to practice in some way. And then you have to have real life experiences. When you do this, you're creating what is known as a know-how. Let's say you have knowledge of what it is to keep a promise. Okay, you have knowledge of that. That's inside your head, you know it. But then you have to practice it. Okay, if you are raising a child, then you put them in that situation where they practice keeping their promise. You promised him, okay, and then later promise. What did you say, Tim? You promised. Now you have to keep it. Okay. If you just keep promising long enough, it becomes a know-how. It's a skill. It's like riding a bicycle, okay? It becomes a skill. Bicycle, knowledge of riding a bike is not something you just know in your head. It's a skill. It is neurological, okay? It is a skill. It's neurological. You do it, okay? I know how to ride a bike. I can do it. Not just I write a paper on riding a bike. For Aristotle, for a person to become moral in that sense, their moral virtues must become a habit, second nature. Okay, it becomes second nature that you're no longer resisting anymore, right? So, whereas Socrates said that morality is having the knowledge alone, that's enough to generate everything. Aristotle said knowledge is It's part of the story, but now you need to practically become a habit, a know-how, or a skill. So an ethical person is a very skillful person, basically. It's like you'd be skilled in playing basketball. You could be skilled in fixing a car. You can also be skilled in being ethical. It's a learned behavior, basically, because he really writes that we are no better than animals at birth, all right? No better than the dogs and the cats. There is a goal we're pursuing, and this is what we're looking at right now. What are the goals we're pursuing in this theory? If you understand what I just said, what are the goals? Humans are rational and habitual. When you develop your rational side, he's talking about developing your intelligence, like you go into school and acquiring knowledge. Intelligence does a lot of things. With intelligence, we calculate, like mathematical calculations. With intelligence, we strategize. With intelligence, we make judgments. This is right, this is wrong. This is intelligence working. With intelligence, we develop language. It's intelligence that developed the language, developed the words. Okay? With intelligence, you acquire wisdom. You have intellectual wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to intellectually grasp the absolute truth. We call that intellectual wisdom. Okay, this is the highest form of intelligence. This is the essence of philosophy. Philosophy is the pursuit of wisdom, or the intellectual pursuit of wisdom. In the ancient time, philosophy had two sides. It's the intellectual pursuit of wisdom, like in Socrates, but it also meant the practical pursuit of wisdom, which is what Aristotle is presenting here. Okay, the moral virtue seeking is also a type of wisdom. We call that practical wisdom. Okay, so the moral virtue, okay, are all those behaviors and emotions that you need to cultivate to make second nature that will lead you to eudaimonia, or the happy life. But in order to get to the happy life, okay, you also need to have intelligence, and you also need to be educated. So they're both virtues to be acquired. Let's dig in a little bit. I highly recommend you go to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy and read some more details of this particular theory, because it is very detailed, and I'm only touching upon it, all right? This is Aristotle's view. At the bottom of the screen in front of you, he talks about 11 moral virtues. This is one translation of those virtues, okay? 11 moral virtues. Courage, pride, truthfulness, temperance, liberality, magnificence, good temper, friendliness, wittiness, justice, and a sense of shame. Friendliness, wittiness, you should be shocked. How could friendliness be a moral virtue? How could be wittiness? You're dry and boring, therefore you're immoral. What is that, Aristotle? And this is true. Aristotle's look at all the characteristics that leads to that happy life and come up with these. And if you think of them long enough, they do make sense, all right? Above these moral virtues he's suggesting, I have given you a chart on how he, in his book, separate them, okay? They cause mean between extremes, okay? So they're mean between extremes. So take three of these virtues. I could choose any three. I'm choosing these three, all right? Courage, pride, and truthfulness. Courage is often seen as a physical behavior. Pride is a type of emotions. And truthfulness is a verbal act. Three different kind of activities here. Courage, standing up for what you believe in the face of challenges. Okay, you have an idea, you stand up for it, like a soldier standing up in defense of their country. All right. But courage can go too far. You can have too little courage and you're a coward. You know, you're standing there, you have all the resources to defend yourself, but you are so frightened you run away. Aristotle argued the courageous person feels fear. They feel the right amount of fear. Too much fear, they run, they become cowards. But Aristotle also argues, okay, you can be rash. Suppose all your other fellow soldiers are dead and you are the last one left, and there's still 200 of them. Aristotle does not think that you stand there fighting them is courageous. That is foolhardy. You're being rash. You're being foolish, okay? You're feeling too little fear. You fought a good fight, your fellows are gone, then go away. Become a guerrilla warfare and kill from at a distance and see how much you can take before they take your life. But you don't just stand there like one group against another group. That is not courage. So in other words, courage is standing for what you believe in a reasonable way. In a reasonable way. This is the mean between extreme. If you go too far, excessive or insufficient, you're going in the way of vice, which is negative, okay? Same thing with pride. Pride is having a certain amount of self-esteem, okay? You do something positive, you earn the A in calculus, you feel good, you feel proud, feel good. Because Aristotle thinks you need to feel pride to live the good life. But if you got the A in calculus, you feel less than somebody just gave it to you, that is seen as a bad thing. And our society think it's really bad, especially amongst young people, and we recommend psychotherapy, speak to a counselor to boost up your self-esteem. On the other side, you get the A and you think you get a big head. You're better than everyone else. You become vain. Okay, vain. Now Aristotle thinks that's going to rub people the wrong way. All right, but you could be proud, feel good for yourself, but when you become too proud, and that vanity generally leads to arrogance, making people belittling people by your words or your attitudes, that they're less than because they haven't even taken calculus. Aristotle says no. That's going to rub people the wrong way. You want to live the good life, you don't want to be arrogant. Truthfulness, all right? Aristotle focused on personal truth when you're talking about yourself, when your qualities. If you lie by yourself and people discover it, of course, that's not going to be a happy life for you. But on the other side, if you boast and brag, let's say you actually have that wonderful Mercedes in your driveway, okay? And that's the car you drive, right? But if you boast, and boasting and bragging means you're telling someone the truth about what you own who don't need to know about it. They don't need to know that. You're not about to pick them up, and therefore you tell them what kind of car you drive so they recognize when you arrive. You just tell them what I have. Then that could be driven by vanity. You're vain, and so you want to boast and brag. Aristotle thought that would rub people the wrong way, and that is not going to lead to good life, okay? And gradually, people want to pull away from you. So personal truth about yourself should be done in moderation. The mean is moderation. He does an analysis of all of these virtues in his book. Please, if you have time, take a little time, take half an hour, go into Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, write Aristotle, and go to his list of virtues and see what they're saying there. A little more details. For our purposes here, let us continue, all right, our summary presentation of Aristotle, okay? An act is morally right if it's produced by a moral person. You will notice at this point, I did not do this kind of analysis in Socrates. That is deliberate, okay? Because most texts do not engage in that in-depth analysis of Socrates. So I didn't do it either. But when you are a virtue ethicist, you speak like this. You think the act itself is moral if the person is moral, okay? But what makes a person moral at Aristotle? If you acquire the virtues, if you already acquired the habit. Notice the word previously is underlined. So if John lies sometimes and John tells the truth sometimes, okay, he's a 50-50% type person. Even if he's been telling the truth all day, he's not a moral person. Acting morally is not means you're moral. You have to have the trait of character. Let's say John lies, okay? He's a 50-50 type of person, but suddenly he understands the nature of telling the truth, okay? Even though his character is flawed. But if he tells the truth out of that knowledge, that genuine knowledge he now has, he's acting morally according to Socrates, because you understand what knowledge is, and he's applying that knowledge to telling, and he's acting morally, even though his character is flawed. As you can see, these two are very, very close, because if John keeps applying that knowledge, eventually it's going to become a character trait, okay? Aristotle is saying if you act even from your knowledge, it's good, but it's not good enough. It's amoral. When you have the habit, then we're going to call it moral. And this is what Aristotle moved, okay? We're going to move from knowledge, not say knowledge is not important, but knowledge is the beginning. We're going to add something else. You're going to apply that knowledge to become second nature. So your act of truth-telling could only get the qualitative label of being moral, okay, if it's coming from your character, your previously acquired character trait, right? Very important, very, very important. For Socrates, it's coming from your acquired knowledge. You're acting from knowledge. From Aristotle, from the character trait. Both philosophers say it's ethical, but it's moral. You have to go deep enough so that when we say it's moral, we're guaranteeing the same thing going to happen in the future. We're guaranteed the same thing's going to happen in the future. So I'm going to continue to engage in the comparison of these theories as I go throughout so that it can make more sense. But when you're making a movie, you create movies around the Aristotelian concept of character. You have to develop the character for the audience. If you want to make them a bad person, they have to consistently do bad things. And then when they're in a situation to take an opportunity, the audience already know that person's going to do something bad because they've been doing bad things already, okay? Movies are driven by Aristotelian concepts in that sense, all right? You want to make a hero, then you must show the person's character, how they've been doing good and stuff like that. Now they're in a position and there's an emergency, you know what their tendency is going to be. Even if they have some kind of internal fight like Spider-Man has when they develop that character, you know they're going to go and pounce on that villain and do the right thing. That's Aristotelian character.